Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. And Daniel, it's good to see you this morning.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing well today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Middle East. I understand that things aren't settled there yet.
Not quite.
There's a few things going on. You know, we talked yesterday about the plane being shot down and who did it, and the Taliban said they did it. But it turns out that the truth is it was an American plane shot down, and probably I believe the story, at least the release of the story, that CIA agents were on board.
Yeah.
But I think that I was kidding you. I said, we'll wait until we get the straight story from our government.
Yeah, right.
And that doesn't usually happen. They have to be trapped and then badgered, and then they'll make up another story. Anyway, we don't know that. But I want to talk about Afghanistan. And I was mentioning to you a little while ago, it's hard to talk about the Iraq War, the war against Iran, the war against Afghanistan, and on and on. There's a Middle East war, including Syria, and they all mesh together. And but right now, a little bit more concentration on Afghanistan. And I was just thinking, maybe what we ought to do, Daniel, is get Obama on our show. Wouldn't it be nice to know an honest reaction? What does he think about Afghanistan and his good war?
Yeah.
But you know, it wouldn't be so strange because they deal with that type of flip-flopping and changing their minds and ups and downs. Just look at the quotes in the impeachment hearings. What did you say 10 years ago? Oh, I said this. And what do you say now? You know, it's all about, it's not developed. They don't have a position which comes from a principle. So it just goes back and forth. But yesterday, you know, we had the plane, but right now we're concerned about what's going to happen there, and there's been announcement now on how bad it is. It isn't a good war. People are still dying, and the farce about it, it's the good war, is a farce. And now we know that there's still a lot of casualties. Trump made some promises. He's not able to live up to them for some reason, and yet the bombs, if you're going to measure a war by the amount of bombs we're dropping, the war is escalating. And although Trump has talked about bringing troops home, I don't see how they're going to start bringing troops home from Afghanistan, and somebody's going to stir it up. And even if he's well-intended, you know, the people who want the war, they're in charge. The CIA and these other people can create conditions that puts the pressure on Trump to not change, and so he does respond to that type of pressure, and that's why I think it's a mixed bag. But anyway, the war has not ended. It's as bad as ever, and it's still costing a lot of money. People are dying, and therefore we still have a job to do to try to talk about a foreign policy that would be better, not only for the people in the Middle East, but better for us here at home as well.
You know, the shooting down of the plane reminds Americans, oh yeah, that's right, we're at war in Afghanistan. We've been there for 19 years, you know, and it brings it back into focus. But, you know, one of the things we want to talk about is a couple of articles that crossed our desk, and, you know, partly thanks to antiwar.com. But it turns out that the U.S. military dropped more bombs in Afghanistan last year under Trump than in any year in the past 10 years. 7,423 munitions. And this is in Operation Freedom's Sentinel, which should make us all feel good about it. At the height of Obama's surge, only 5,100 bombs were dropped. So Trump really outbombed him. And you had a steady procession of commanders in Afghanistan promising, this time, this will do what it takes. A few thousand more bombs. And you may remember, because I'm pretty sure we did a show about this back in October of 2017, when then Secretary of Defense Mattis announced that we've got a new idea. We're going to change the rules of engagement. This is going to get us over the hump. They removed the proximity requirements on bombing, so you didn't have to be in proximity to the enemy. You could just bomb him wherever. And that was going to be the ticket. Dunford, the general, said, no, this is it. This will make us more effective. That's been almost 3 years ago that they promised this. So record number of bombs, all these wonderful new strategies we're still losing the war.
You know, I was wondering what would they call us if, what would we call them if they came and did this to us?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we would be outraged, and rightfully so. But you know, the irony of all this mess over there, I thought there was an irony when it came to, Iraq. They vote to get us out. We've talked about that. And Million Man March, and they want us out. They want us out. But yesterday, you know, because there's a conflict there, and there's some rioting all going on still in Iraq, our government instructed the Iraqis, now you do know that it is your job to protect us in our embassy.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? It's sort of like getting out of the nuclear agreement with Iran.
Yeah.
We get out and undermine the whole thing, and then we blame Iran for not following the rules.
Yeah.
You know, so that is a real tragedy. But this thing has a ways to go. Matter of fact, Trump has said he had never had the intention of removing all the Trumps, and they never do. It's always to hold a group. It's always to play to the audience. And right now, we see all this activity, but if you turn on the evening news, 80% is on why we have to impeach the president.
Yeah.
You know, and but because both sides probably support, the war activity. No matter what they say, they support it because they vote for the money.
Yeah.
And when they voted, tried to get a vote to say that we should not be involved in Iran, the whole thing was overthrown, in the conference. So they work well together, except when it's down to the wire on who gets to pull the strings, who's in power, and that's where the conflict comes. But a lot of people suffer from this, the wars that continue, and it's almost like the cost in life and limb and money is irrelevant. And that's why I have always predicted that this will continue, because we still have that license to kill and license to print money and license to threaten and intimidate. But it's impossible to last forever. And sometimes when I see this happening, the failures are cropping up. And that's why it'd be a much wiser thing to do to maybe take a little bit of our advice and back off. And we get people talking this way, and Trump talks that way. But unfortunately, there's not much follow through.
And Trump, for all of his bravado and all of his tough guy attitude, he's a pretty weak president. He says, we are getting our troops out of Afghanistan. And then they say, oh, no, we're not. Oh, okay. He backs down. But, hand in hand with this massive increase of bombs that we're dropping is an increase in civilian casualties and deaths. And that's what we've seen in Afghanistan as well this year. We both saw this article from mentioning the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission, which is criticizing the spike in civilian deaths. 485 civilians killed, an additional 265 wounded in the past 12 months. My guess is that the number is a lot higher than that.
Right.
You probably can add a zero to that. Who knows? But, it raises the question, we're dropping more bombs, killing more innocent civilians. What are we doing there? What is the goal there? And, the other thing that's interesting, and someone else mentioned this, that ironically, this increase in civilian deaths is a counterproductive to our stated goals in Afghanistan, because we want to prop up this government. They're our guys, and they're going to be the government of Afghanistan. But the more civilians that we kill in the process, the less the civilians in Afghanistan have faith in their government. They can't even protect us. And so it makes the Taliban more attractive. Taliban's not out there dropping thousands of bombs. It makes the Afghanistan government look weak, and it's counterproductive to the war effort.
And the incentive for terrorism is increased, and this, of course, is one of the strongest motivation of what we do over there. Then they have to retaliate. But, I think it's interesting on Trump's comments about Pakistan. He comes up with those flattering terms. Oh, they're our best friends. They're the greatest thing in the world. But there's some pretty good reports, which I tend to believe, that the Pakistanis are undermining what we're trying to do in Afghanistan and actually helping the radicals and stir up the difficulty. I don't understand all their motivations and all, but to think that you can say the Pakistanis are great and wonderful people, at the same time the evidence is there, they're probably serving the interests of our today's enemy.
Yeah. And they may have had a hand in helping shoot down this plane. You never know. They could send a strong message, especially as if some of the whispers we're hearing that one of the top CIA guys was on the plane, Michael DeAndre, the architect, interestingly enough, of the assassination on Soleimani. We haven't heard any confirmation of that, but just whispers. But if that's the case, that would send a strong signal that we can take out your top guy.
Now, if they can do that, that fits into my theory of the scenario that our empire is weakening, and there are more people ganging up on us, and our ability to maintain order is weakening. And I think that is the case. If we were very, very powerful, we could do something like what we did after World War I, how we occupied the Philippines. And we go in here and it doesn't work. We end up, in conflict with them, and they retaliate, and they use a technique which is known for thousands of years, is retaliation through terrorist type of attacks. If they can't do it with armies, they'll do it some other way.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. And what's amazing to me, and I know you feel the same way, is how quickly the Afghanistan papers just fizzled out and died. You said earlier, everyone's, the news is completely dominated with the impeachment. He said, this sort of thing. Oh, Bolton's back. But this Afghanistan papers was a bombshell. This was a special inspector general for Afghanistan reconstruction who conducted thousands of interviews with the key players involved. They came out through the Washington Post that they lied. The other things that came out, $1 trillion wasted in spending, the death of 100,000 plus Afghanis, 2,300 U.S. soldiers killed, 133 billion in development spending totally vaporized. Yet it's ignored. The whole thing is ignored. It went crashed and burned. And there's Christian Century is a publication that nailed why it's ignored, and I think it makes a point that's not alien to us, that both parties are so clearly implicated in the disaster that the partisan U.S. media doesn't want to cover it because they don't want to make their guys look bad, whether you're MSNBC or Fox or whatever. They're partisan. There's no independent journalism anymore, so nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And the other thing is that the American people aren't interested because all the spending is hidden. It's all emergency spending, so they never see it. No one ever comes by at the end of the month, takes out half their paycheck. And the other thing is that most Americans don't serve in the military and know people that do serve in the military. So they don't even see the wounded. They don't even see that part of it. So it's just a completely invisible war.
And when they do some polling, they realize that the American people, don't trust the government anymore either. And yet, when it comes to elections and different things and support and the socialist movement, they believe that these same clowns that we have in office are all of a sudden going to fulfill all these promises. Yes, we're going to give you whatever you want forever. And they don't understand anything about economics, when you look at pension funds and Social Security and all the debt that existed. And yet they want to trust, they want to believe. At the same time, if you take a poll, do you believe what you hear on the television and what's going on? It boils down, we believe what the Republicans are saying, but we don't believe what the Democrats are saying. And they won't look at it and find out, they're one and the same. They're the same people. And then we end up with support coming around the world. Guess who's the strongest for saying us we should stay there? The Saudis and Israel.
Yeah.
They're saying, don't leave.
Yeah.
Well, they have their concerns, and they deserve to take care of them. But the whole thing is, is that where we get our directions? That we have to stay there forever?
Yeah.
And going in there had to deal with that same coalition, and yet we may not have paid the price of the deaths, but we caused the deaths indirectly by, the hundreds of thousands. Probably some people say 1 million people have died in the Middle East in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So we have a moral responsibility there. So then you have to ask the question, why are we there? Especially when the evidence is so clear. It's not working. And then this unassociated acceptance of the government, believe the government wants, at one time when they are going to give us something, at the same time, they know that, they're lying to us.
Yeah.
And, I think it's interesting and significant that government commissions are the worst way to seek truth.
Yeah.
Whether it's the 9/11 Commission or the Kennedy Commission, all this, people just don't believe it, and I think that's healthy, but it doesn't change policy. That's what is necessary. Policy has to be changed, and that requires an educational activity, and it's pretty tough when you look at all the nonsense going on this cultural Marxism and everything, because the universities, you see, the 90-some% of all the professors are supportive of all this radical left-wing stuff.
Yeah.
And they're teaching our kids.
Waste of money.
It's amazing that they can come out of there with an education.
If they do at all. You made a good point, and you referred to it, and I noticed this too. The Saudi foreign minister said, no, you can't take your troops out of Iraq. You got to stay. This. And Trump, he gives the Saudis everything they want. Only thing he does, he says, well, you got to pay for it. And it turns our troops into mercenaries. Hey, you pay for them, and you can have them. But I would just close by saying that Dr. Paul is totally right. This is one big war. This isn't Afghanistan, Iraq. This is one big war, and it's a big loser war. We're losing. We're destroying our economy. We're destroying what's left of our reputations. We're destroying lives overseas and at home. We can't fix it. We can't fix Afghanistan. We can't fix Iraq. The only thing we can do is to pull out and get out of the way. We sound like a broken record, but that's the only thing we can do. So that's what we try to advocate here every day. Please remember to subscribe to our channel. Go to ronpaulinstitute.org and subscribe for updates. Keep yourself informed so that you can make these points to others when it comes time.
Very good, Daniel. And and when I try to figure out, and Daniel, with his help, we try to figure out how much money was spent in Afghanistan, how much in Iraq, how much on Iran, how much in Syria. It's pretty difficult because nobody gives us a figure about Libya, and Libya's pretty important. We destroyed that country in no time, but a lot of money was involved, and the ramifications cost. They do have a number for Middle East military operations of over $6 trillion. But, that was a year ago, so it's still skyrocketing. So there's trillions of dollars. That's why I think the point that this is one big war and it's continuous, but it's a war that reflects a philosophy of needless and ridiculous foreign interventionism, which we should reject. That is not the proper role for a republic. A republic is to defend itself, but it's also to practice the rules of independence and free markets and sound money and do these kind of things that people would say, wow, look at America, it's a great country. And at one time, basically, a lot of countries did that over the years, but not anymore because, even on the statistics, we're slipping behind some countries that you would think, hey, that's a old country, an old-fashioned country, and a socialist country, that we're slipping on education and even on some of the economic matters. So the philosophy has to change, and non-intervention is the answer to the problems because that denotes liberty and peace. And that is what we do here. We try to present the peace and prosperity philosophy, and it starts with, we do have an imperfect constitution because it's not working very well. But the thoughts that went into that of minding our own business and not fighting foreign wars and getting involved and having a sound monetary system, it's there. But right now, it looks like we're going to go through the ringer before the people wake up. And if they wake up and say that, Bernie Sanders is right. We need a true blue, liberal, socialist, and that is the answer. And that could happen. But we will keep warning you, and we're going to keep working to say that the real way to go is toward peace and prosperity by protecting liberty. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.